WolfPunch.
What's the deal with Papa John's? I don't understand.
It's garbage.
It's bad pizza.
Don't know about that.
No, it's.
I agree, but what's new about that?
Oh, so there is an ad. There's a tie-in with the new Final Fantasy game because apparently, like, you can eat a slice of Papa John's pizza in game, and then there was like a character from the game doing an ad for it on Facebook where it's like, "Oh, use this discount code to get 10% off your next Papa John's order." And I'm like, why are Japanese role-playing characters trying to sell me Papa John's pizza? Like, I wonder if like the stat boost in game gives you like minus 20 respect for NFL protesters or something.
You're right. I don't care about this.
Yeah.
All right. So we are WolfPunch,
Yes.
and this week
I think we're WolfPunch with an emphasis on the wolf. Because, I love dogs.
Punch.
Yeah.
Dog punch.
Yes.
Dog punch sounds weird.
No,
How about Donkey Punch?
Yep. That was the original title. We just didn't want to book a library.
Anyway, we are WolfPunch, and we are 4 alpha dogs. I am Yezin, you're Kyle, you're Kemp, you're Dan.
I am.
I see what you did there.
I'm Bryan Cranston.
No, you're not.
No, you're Yezin. You already said it.
All right, well, I'm Yezin, voiced by Bryan Cranston. Can't you guys hear it?
No.
You aren't the danger.
Damn it. Okay. Well, this week we saw Isle of Dogs, the new Wes Anderson movie, his second animated feature, starring Bryan Cranston
And a billion other fucking
and a
people.
billion other people.
And a bunch of Wes Anderson actors.
Yeah, Wes actors. I can't do it. Okay.
Can't do what? Were you
I
trying
was
to
trying
do?
to combine the word actor and Wes Anderson.
Wes
You call him
Anderson.
a whacker.
No, you gotta end with that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So point is, we saw this movie, and stars Bryan Cranston. He's a dog, and he's on Isle of Dogs. Takes place in Japan, and there's a dog flu epidemic, and they send all the dogs to the Isle of Dogs.
Yeah.
And
It's like
the
poetry.
trash island.
Yeah.
It's like
It's like a haiku, you would say. Kyle looks so
It's very
sad
learned,
today.
very learned in Japanese culture.
Anyway, and pretty good.
It was okay.
I almost couldn't tell he didn't direct this by email like his previous stop-motion film. Yeah, Fantastic Mr. Fox, apparently he directed the majority of it by email.
That's weird.
Yeah, he's got a lot of integrity, Wes Anderson.
Well,
Piece of shit.
Shows in every film. But no, what did you guys, okay, Kyle, you're kind of mad on it?
I thought it was okay. I thought it was going. I wasn't interested in seeing this movie very much, but I expected it to be better than it was.
Oh, why? Wes
Well,
Anderson.
I don't hate Wes Anderson. I don't love
I don't
Wes
either.
Anderson.
It's just kind of like he's there.
Yeah.
And when people like really love him, it kind of is like, well, he's there.
Yeah. I think that he has some movies that are like really, really good. And like from the trailer, I watched it and I was like, so I was telling you, in this, like I almost had like a similar feeling when I watched Inglourious Bastards in theaters, where it was like my initial take, I was a little disappointed just because I thought that it was going to be more about these bastards scalping people, and that was like not a very big part of the story. But I did really like Inglourious Bastards, and that doesn't bother me anymore. But like when I watched this movie, I thought it was going to be more about
Dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be more about this group of dogs hanging out.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough of that in the movie.
I agree.
And then there was a bunch of shit I didn't care about. So
yeah,
that's my initial take.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there is a sense that they have maybe more plot lines than they needed. There's that one plot line with the five dogs hanging out with this kid looking for his dog, and that's the plot line you want. That's the plot line you want to see more of. But then for some reason, they kind of intercut that plot line with a bunch of other things that don't really work as well. Like the girl with the blonde afro from Ohio, and the other dog,
and the scientists,
and like some of the politics of the city. And
well, I
stuff.
mean, they needed a white savior arc in it too to really sell to the masses.
It's true.
Well, I will say I don't think that counts as a white savior arc. At all.
I mean, she's not the main character, but she is an outsider that basically solves the problem for everyone because they can't do it themselves.
Not really.
I'm pretty sure that was his way of like, I don't want to have to do subtitles, so I need a character that's speaking English.
Yeah.
When he's too lazy to have the translation machine show up in the shot.
No.
Yeah.
Even though he could have just done it.
Yeah. He has a point.
Yeah, that was a
We
bit
both have
confusing.
points.
That was a bit confusing. I will say though that I like something that was kind of on the top of everyone's like radar, or not everyone's radar, on top of some people's radar going in was like, how is this movie going to be about like cultural appropriation and all that? I actually think it's fine. I don't think there's a white savior arc in this movie at all, just because I think that.
He has a soft spot for Wes Anderson, so he can do no wrong.
No,
Yeah.
That's totally true.
It's
Steven
not-
Spielberg directed this, man. He'd be on a soapbox.
No, it's not that. It's that it's not about elevating the white characters. Like they use Japan, but Japan is mostly an aesthetic. But again, the main characters are dogs and a Japanese kid. Like the girl kind of feels extra. Like I feel like
She could have been entirely cut out.
exactly
yeah,
she could have been cut out of the movie. So she's not the main character.
It wasn't
and she's
the
not
focus.
She's
but I
not the
think it's
focus.
still
The fact
definitely
that she
an
was
aspect.
there was kind of annoying.
So should we talk about what this movie passes off as a plot for a little bit, just in case anyone is curious? I guess we haven't. Really
Sure,
talked
yeah,
about
go
it.
for it.
Yeah, go.
Oh, I don't want to be the one to explain.
Okay, well, the story is that I kind of said it earlier. There's a city in Japan called Megasaki, and it has dog flu. And then they're like, "All right, this dog flu is bad. Let's exile all the dogs." Then this kid, who's the mayor of Megasaki's nephew, he hijacks a plane and flies it to the Isle of Dogs, looking for his lost dog Spots. Then a bunch of dogs living on that island like find him, and they're trying to help him find his dog.
Yeah. But then there's some weird legend about like his ancestors.
His ancestor being like a
banishing
samurai,
the cat,
or
yeah, like banishing the cat-loving people. But they
I
still lost
think
or
his
something.
the cat loving people are his ancestors.
Yeah, I didn't understand the they didn't do a good job.
This movie is anti-cat propaganda. It's total horseshit.
Well, I mean, cats are awful. So
Shut up, Dan.
Yeah.
You already started on Papa John's. You don't need to go after cats too. Why don't you just shut up for the day?
Kyle Miller, he loves cats, Papa John's, and
That's it.
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that the legend was fine. I think the thing about the movie is the stuff that works really works, and then the stuff that doesn't work kind of just sits there. Like I really enjoy Bryan Cranston as a dog. I really enjoy Edward Norton as a dog and Bill Murray as a dog. I think those characters are really fun, and a lot of it is kind of reminiscent of the show Wilfred. If anyone's seen it,
I saw the first season.
yeah, it's a show in which Shia LaBeouf plays this depressed guy, and like
You mean Elijah Wood?
Yeah, come on.
I call him Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
They
You
did.
Damn.
just think all white people look alike.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, the show where Elijah Wood's this depressed guy, and his neighbor's dog appears to him as like a guy in a dog suit, and he talks to him, but like a person. Yet he has all of the thoughts that a dog would have about things, and I thought that was what the movie did particularly well. Like the way the dogs, and they have sort of like these civilized like tones, and they like talk like people, yet they think like dogs. Like oh, there's some trash. This is worth fighting and dying over because it's just so much trash that we can eat through. It's like I thought that stuff was fun, and that's the stuff that worked for the movie.
Yeah.
Like the humor was kind of hit and miss for a lot of parts, but like when it did well, it did really well. Like I think one of my favorite parts was they were talking about the Oracle, the one dog, and it's like, oh, she can see the future, and it's like it's supposed to snow tomorrow. It's like, oh, how does she know that? And then it like shows the TV off on the screen, and like the only dog that can like look at it, process it, like, oh, this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, that made me laugh.
That was
funny,
good.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good bit, and it was things like that like I thought it did the best, but yeah, there's just a lot of extraneous bullshit that.
I feel like it could have been condensed down to like a half-hour TV
It
special.
kind of felt like a
and been
children,
really good.
Yeah, a children's story that they just kind of like padded out.
Yeah, no, it's really weird because like there's not a lot of like depth to it. Like it has the depth of a kids movie and kind of the plot of a kids movie, but it's not entirely appropriate for little
It's
kids.
like mean-spirited in random spots, too.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. Like, I feel like the movie theater I went to didn't know what trailers to play before it. Because first it played like a couple kids movie trailers. Then it played like the trailer for Super Troopers 2.
Yeah.
And like kids shouldn't see that. Like, and
No
I feel
one
like
should see that.
that shows how the movie just like. True.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right there. But like it didn't know, like the movie was kind of for kids and kind of not, and I feel like that.
I don't know. I actually think that Wes Anderson movies kind of know that they're for adults. It's just that weirdly it has a kids movie, depth and a kids movie premise.
I mean, yeah, it's stop motion talking animals.
Yeah.
So it's very much
and
in line with the aesthetics that make up most kids' movies.
Yeah, but I don't think that I don't think this is a movie for kids really.
No, I mean, but it's a movie that kids are going to see because they'll see the trailer and be like, oh look, cartoon dogs.
It's
Maybe,
definitely
I
not
don't know.
sanitized, and I definitely don't feel like it's really marketed towards kids, and the fact that like it's only in select theaters and it's
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
But I mean, there were quite a few kids in the theater I was in.
No.
Yeah.
It's not that I think that this movie is for kids. I guess I'm just wondering, why is this movie for adults? Like, why are we as adults watching this? I mean, look, I'm the toughest, coolest one of this group by far, and I love animals, and that's like, it's a soft spot for me. Animal shit will make me sad. The Jurassic Park episode of Futurama gets me every time. But I mean, this movie didn't like, I don't know, dogs are just like, it's cheap. Everybody falls for dogs. Everybody loves dogs. There's nothing complicated about that. And then there was like, I was surprised by how non-moved I was by this movie.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get me worked up about animals, and this movie just didn't do it a whole lot. Maybe like at one or two parts, I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Well, like I said, told you, like the only part I really got choked up at was the kidney transplant.
This is because you're fucking weird,
I
man.
am. But that was it. Like everything else, I was like, don't really feel sad right now, or really anything.
That might be, I don't know, that might be due to like the humanization of the dogs a little bit because they're really like made to be like people, and so they lose some of their like dog innocence.
No, I don't think that.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's a valid point. I don't think so.
Well,
there wasn't a whole lot to it where they're like the guy is making the speech where it's like, we're gonna get all the fucking dogs out of the city. We hate dogs. Dogs are the worst. And then the one guy's like, whatever happened to man's best friend? And I'm like, I'm not 8 years old. This doesn't do anything for me.
I see what you mean. I think that something that I was thinking about is that Wes Anderson sort of only is able to apply a real heart to one of his. I think the only Wes Anderson movie that really has like a lot of heart to it is The Royal Tenenbaums. And every other Wes Anderson movie kind of has this, because of the style, like his movies tend to be more about aesthetic and comedy and just style.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't a lot of like real emotional connection. Like the most Wes Anderson movie is probably The Grand Budapest Hotel. It's so overt about his style of dialogue. Like, and I don't just mean visual, I mean dialogue, character relationships, the concept, like being about a hotel. I mean, it's so out there. And it's a very good movie. It's a very funny movie, but it like really shows that like when he really pushes his style, he kind of loses like some of the heart of like a genuine story about people.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, dogs are people too. A genuine story about people where you kind of feel a connection to it and you kind of feel moved by it. I think he was able to find that somewhere in The Royal Tenenbaums because it was a story about like a family and, like watching it at the end when like, the sort of like the family issue sort of resolves and then you find out, and then Gene Hackman dies. And that's pretty sad.
Spoiler alerts for The Royal Tenenbaums for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Well, it's been like over a decade, so yeah. Your fault.
Okay, I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's like, I mean, it would be fine if this movie, like, doesn't have a lot of heart or like depth, if it was really funny. Like,
yeah,
because I was rewatching. I didn't finish, but I was rewatching Grand Budapest earlier today, and I'm like, that movie's actually really fucking funny. The movie's hilarious. And I mean, part of it is because it's just like it just pushes things really, really well. Like you're watching this guy like have sex with old ladies while like also seeing him just like be very British and proper and like all these goofy montages. Just a really funny movie throughout. And I mean, Isle of Dogs isn't very funny. The dogs are funny, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get into like spoiler territory here. There's not a whole lot to spoil with this movie anyway, but there's a point where Bryan Cranston and the little boy get separated from all the other dogs, and all of the other dogs might as well have just died.
Yeah.
Because they have like a couple of lines of dialogue after that, and they don't do anything for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
They make you think that the dog.
Yeah, they make you think that they died.
And I was really sad about that, but I thought,
I also kind of laughed.
I thought that's amazing, but horrible.
Yeah.
But then the dogs aren't dead.
So I wish they would have
do
followed through with
anything.
it. Yeah.
I mean, they could have, but honestly, more so, I just wish there had just been a movie about those dogs.
Yeah.
With the
At
kid.
the end of the day, that was the best part.
The movie makes a lot of really weird, maybe not weird, just like useless decisions to me. Where like Chief looked better black. He gives him a bath, and he's white, a little whitewashing in there, and he looks like Spots. And I was like, this is kind of dumb, and it doesn't add anything to the story. That, spoiler alert, Chief winds up being Spots' brother.
Yeah.
And that doesn't add anything to the movie at all.
No.
Like, why is that better that he's Spots' brother? Why can't he just be a black dog?
Yeah.
That looks different and isn't related to Spots. And then, honestly, something that I thought Spots should have been dead. I thought that
it would have been really funny, like at the beginning when you see his cage and like the little dog skeleton in there. Where again, I kind of laughed.
Hate dogs. So
I love dogs, but I just.
Well, that's the movie.
Okay, real quick. I'm really sick of dogs not dying in movies. I love dogs. I'm just sick of this thing where like you always see on the internet people like sharing a meme or something where it's like, am I the only one that cares more about the dog in the movie than the people? Like people are always sharing shit like that where everyone seems to be under the opinion that they're like a minority viewpoint here on loving dogs more than people, especially in movies.
It's almost like people just post what they want to be reassured
it drives me mad. And this carries over into movies where you're like, and then we get the shot of the dog escaping the tidal wave or the explosion and they're safe. And it just bugs the hell out of me. All the best movies kill the dog. I'm just throwing that out there. Just saying.
Name one.
The Thing.
Okay.
Jaws.
I Am Legend.
Okay.
I Am Legend.
Well.
And that is a sad
That
sequence.
is a sad fucking... That's the only humanity in that movie right there.
Yeah, that part...
It's not a great movie.
It's not a great movie, but that scene, part, like...
It actually has emotional resonance unlike anything else in that fucking
movie.
Well,
I feel really bad when the dog dies in Jaws.
John Wick. They killed the dog before.
There would be no movie if the dog didn't die. So I'm just saying, like, I get really annoyed by that, but... I don't hate dogs. What was I saying before this? Before I went on this tangent, somebody was talking.
I accused you of hating dogs. And
then I talked about how much I want them to die. Whoops. No, they were just weird. Like, it would have been funny if Spots was dead at the beginning. But, okay, well, hear me out. So it would have been fine if Spots was dead at the beginning because, one, the way that they introduced that's a funny scene where it was like, we hear he was a really great guy. Unfortunately, nobody figured out.
And just so everyone knows, Spots is the little boy's dog.
Yeah.
That he's looking for.
Yeah. Because you know immediately, like, this, you know what this movie is. This is going to be the story of, like, Bryan Cranston is the dog that doesn't like the little boy. And it's going to be the story of how he falls in love with the little boy. And that's the story that matters. And that's really the only one that matters throughout the entire movie. And some of it is done well, some of it's done bad. Like, when he says... I'm astray, you're just waiting for the point in the movie where he says I wasn't always astray. But that story wound up being better than I thought. I thought he was just going to be like Chance from Homeward Bound or something.
No, it was a good story where, like, also the way he delivers it. Like they kind of play at the fact that you're expecting this reveal, and then they just give it to you in kind of like a
random scene.
Like a random scene where he's almost like he wants to tell everyone, and it's like, oh, this is funny. And then like the backstory where he actually where he bit a kid.
Yeah. And
then he doesn't know why, and he just feels bad about it. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
like, because I feel like that's a dog thing. Like, I feel like a dog wouldn't necessarily know why it acts the way it does sometimes. So I like that.
Yeah. They're great. Anyway, but, so when Spots comes back at the end, that's fine. But they do like this thing that's just, this is a small criticism of the movie, but it annoys me, is Spots resigns as Akira's Atari's guard dog. He resigns because he has a little dog family of his own, and he instates Bryan Cranston. I don't remember his dog's name. He instates Bryan Cranston, Chief, as the next guard dog, and then they do this thing where they like kind of trick you at the very end of like maybe thinking Spots has died, but then he's alive.
Yeah, that was weird.
That was completely useless because
that was weird. For a second, I thought like, wait, is that like the afterlife? Oh no, then why are his kids there?
Yeah,
it was weird
because they drown all the puppies because they were like, we're not feeding them.
Yeah,
no, I'm just saying like that was a little useless bit because Spots shouldn't die now. It would be terrible if Spots died because, one, they led you to think that he did at the beginning, so he can't be dead. Two, he already resigned from his position. It doesn't add anything to the story if he's dead. And then it's really annoying that they try to trick you into thinking that he's dead again.
Because Kyle wants all the dogs to die.
It's not that I
make up your mind.
Does no one understand what I'm trying to say? Does no one get what I'm saying
I
here?
get it. No, I think that ultimately, like, that's a little bit aside from my main. I think my main issue is like, so you take a movie like this, and animated movies are by nature like a little bit sillier than live action. Yet there is a capacity for animated movies to like be able to deliver like real strong emotional stories.
Bro's talking about anime right now, just so you know. But continue.
Like I'm talking about like Pixar, like something like Inside Out. Like that's a movie that'll make you cry when you're watching it. But and Wes Anderson
probably not. I don't know. I didn't watch it.
It's a very good movie. Or like Up. Wes Anderson can't seem to deliver like that kind of like real emotional. Like the first few minutes of Up are just like everyone knows about him as being like one of the saddest like scenes in movies, and then like, or it's one of the most notoriously sad scenes anyway. And then Inside Out is another notoriously touching and sad movie, and Isle of Dogs doesn't really know how to get to anything like that. And I don't think any Wes Anderson movie really has since Royal Tenenbaums. And it's just because I think he focuses less on character and more on aesthetic. And by aesthetic, I don't just mean visuals. I mean like the entire aesthetic of the movie. It doesn't think as much about like character relationships. And I mean, an example of that is the Grand Budapest Hotel, which is a great movie, yet, there isn't like a real strong relationship to that movie. It's just like Ralph Fiennes and then his bellboy, who's just kind of following
lobby boy,
whatever. And then Saoirse Ronan is in that, but like, there's nothing really powerful.
She's got like a birthmark on her face. It's like Ready Player One.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of his
Ready
movies...
Player, Wes Anderson.
No.
Stop trying to do that. It's not worked out yet.
I feel like
I'll get there.
Are like just like characters, like almost like they're very like play-like, but it's like a character walks out on the stage, says some like dialogue that's very like long-winded and very like you can tell it's very like crafted to sound like Wes Anderson-y.
There's
and then that's it. And there's no like you were saying, like there's nothing behind it beyond the aesthetic.
Yeah,
and that's the big problem with a lot of his movies.
I think that he is starting. It's like an issue that's starting to show where like
starting to.
You know what, Dan? Why don't? Because I feel like I might be losing a little popularity here after the whole "dogs should die" rant. So why don't you tell us why you don't like Wes Anderson?
I mean, I don't want to say I don't like him. I just don't think he really deserves all the praise he's gotten over the years. Like, I know you guys are really big fans of the Grand Budapest Hotel, and I saw that when it came out in theaters. I haven't seen it since, so my opinion might change upon rewatching it. But, like, just watching it, I was just kind of bored. Like, you guys said it was, like, really funny, and maybe, like, that kind of humor just didn't really jive with me so much, because when I went in to see it, I actually expected it to be, like, based on the trailers and stuff, more, I guess, witty than it actually turned out to be. Instead, there was, like, just really weird tonal shifts of like seriousness and like violence and then like bitterness to a lot of it. And it didn't work for me with this whole overall like super precious symmetrical aesthetic that he has on everything.
See, I understand what you're saying. That's part of why it worked. Is because there were a lot of times where it was like surprisingly crude, and also I don't know if you noticed, but I happen to think violence is pretty funny sometimes. So a lot of that just worked for me.
And it's weird too because I really loved Royal Tenenbaums when I first saw it back in high school, and then I hadn't seen it since until I think like last year, and then I rewatched it, and I was just kind of like, oh, I guess this was just kind of like baby's first indie film, like going back, and it's just like a lot of things that like really resonated with me, and I thought I really enjoyed. I was just kind of like it just kind of lost a lot of its like appeal and luster, and it's weird because I think. For me personally, his aesthetic works best when it's applied to more films kind of like Isle of Dogs, like in Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like, I actually really liked Moonrise Kingdom a lot when that came out. It just felt like, it felt more heartfelt and sincere than a lot of the other works I've seen. Probably because it wasn't about like middle-aged men with stupid problems I don't care about, which all his films tend to be about aside from that. But as far as Isle of Dogs go and how his style is applied to it, like, I enjoyed it. It was cute. A lot of it feels quirky for the sake of being Wes Anderson quirky, but, like, nothing really resonates or sticks past that level. Like, it's just kind of there. It's like his whole shtick is starting to feel like he just took Zooey Deschanel's quirky sense of humor and just distilled that into filmmaking aesthetics. There you go.
I think that's overly harsh.
That is a little overly harsh because, I mean, Wes Anderson does have talent. But,
yeah. Boom roasted.
Zooey Deschanel can sing. Didn't you watch Elf?
You should watch New Girl.
She can't pronounce tiramisu though, apparently, according to The Happening.
Okay. Anyway,
forgot about The Happening.
I'll try to
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think that there's like a sweetness to a lot of Wes Anderson's movies, though. I think it's there in Isle of Dogs. It's there in Moonrise Kingdom. It's actually there in Bottle Rocket quite a bit. There's sort of just something like kind of sweet about Dignan's whole shtick, where he thinks he's like an expert criminal or whatever. But then there's something. I think he doesn't follow it through. He doesn't like make it the core of his movies, sort of like the characters or the relationships, and his movies kind of suffer for that. I think Moonrise Kingdom is one that kind of like I think that's one of his more underrated movies actually because I think it actually does. Kyle doesn't like Moonrise Kingdom, but I think Moonrise Kingdom is able to like it's really good thematically in exploring like sort of like adulthood, like sort of like sad adults versus like hopeful, optimistic children, and it sort of does this weird. It's good at exploring a theme. It explores like adulthood versus childhood, and there is like a relationship at the core, and it's like it's a shallow relationship, but it's really evocative of like relationships that you might have had as a kid, or kind of the experience of trying to have a relationship as like a teenager and like kind of just trying to figure things out. So I think that there's his movies like might try a little bit to be like evocative in that way of not relying on the relationships present in the movies, but using those relationships as like a stand-in for something that the audience might have experienced themselves. It's just that with Isle of Dogs, I don't think he really fully gets there, just because it's so. It just honestly, it really does come down to me to trying to put in stuff that didn't matter and not spending enough time with like the dogs.
Honestly, I think that he just thought that the work was done for him because of the subject matter, because it's dogs. There's not a lot. There's not a lot to it. People love dogs. Here's a movie about.
I mean, the movie's called "I Love Dogs."
Yeah, I know. I cracked that code. I also get the hoof-hearted sign downtown. No, it's just you don't get that.
No, it took me a second. I got it.
Thank you, Dan.
I didn't laugh. I got it.
Yeah, that's okay. You didn't have to laugh. I don't laugh when I pass it. Anyway, passing could also be a pun.
Who farted?
Yeah.
There we go.
Mm.
I don't know the song. I don't know the sign.
It's a lower downtown. Anyway, so I just think I don't know. It's pretty easy subject matter for everyone to get behind.
Well, yeah, I think that's understood, but I don't think it's just about I don't think it's just about him knowing that like, oh, there's an emotional core here. I think there's also a sense that like he's trying to cram in so much stuff, and I don't think he really knows
what story he was trying to tell.
Well, I don't. It's not that. I think that he thought that this overarching this big story. Okay, so to me, I think that there is this sense that he might have been going for like a weird refugee thing, and I just don't think like I see
really
it.
don't think. I mean,
It's
I can
there.
see how
It's
you can
there.
that. I don't.
But it's not.
Yeah,
I think he is. I think that somewhere in the subtext, that's what he's trying to do. But it's so shallow and so not what this movie is cut out for that I think because I think that's what he's waiting because like when you factor in like the activist girl and the evil government like mayor and sort of some of the underlying concepts of like we actually sent the dogs away, we've like sort of kicked them out, and then there's the political I know political is such a heavy word to use about such like a silly shallow kid like interpretation of it, but there is like a weird politics to the movie, and there's an election and all that, so it really does feel to me like he's doing like a weird refugee not allegory but like reference, but it's so not developed, and what he has there is so, for lack of better words, shallow that it almost like you don't even think about it. Yeah, he doesn't get credit for it because why would you give it credit? And I think he should have cut that aspect out, and I really think it should have just been about the kid and the dogs, like all the evil mayor and the government and the election and the activist girl. That should have really been either cut out or pushed to the very background. Like activist girl out, mayor and government stuff and election stuff, that should have just been like way in the background.
Yeah, just enough in there to excuse the plot.
Yeah, just enough there as to give context to like a weird adventure on the Isle of Dogs.
I agree.
Like, I think it would have been fun if instead of cutting back and forth between the island and Nagasaki, if it had just been like a kid and these dogs on an adventure on an island filled with dogs, and you see different types of dogs living on this island, and you just see like these weird scenarios with them. And there could be other, I don't know, like there was an owl, there could be other animals too. Something like that, I think was maybe more so when you cut out the refugee thing, I think you get like a more succinct idea for a movie.
I mean, why did the cats go to jail? What did they even do? They were just there. That ain't even right.
I was like half expecting that the cats were going to turn out to be like piloting the mayor. Like
so did I.
Like,
so did I.
Like I thought like, oh, is the mayor just like a cat in disguise or something like that?
That would have made more sense.
It would have been.
It would have been like.
It would have been more fun, and I think it would have. I don't know if it necessarily fits in this world. I thought that would have been a fun thing to do.
Yeah, this movie's not as fun as it should have been.
Yeah.
It is, you know.
It is, but like they could have really leaned into some of the stuff that they set up.
It was like Michael said. You could have you could take the fun parts and just make it about like a half hour.
Yeah.
I think an hour is closer to it, but 45 minutes. Let's say that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've been shitting on it a lot. I do think it's a good movie.
Wait, we shit on a movie? That doesn't sound like us.
Yeah, we love movies.
Yeah.
Guys, just because you shit on Ready Player One doesn't mean you have to shit on everything. All right. So I do think there are good things about this movie. I do think like as all you know, like a lot of this is judging off having seen all the Wes Anderson movies. So we're like not even talking about the aesthetic or like his sense of humor at all. And it is worth mentioning that stuff is still, to me, at least personally, pretty on point. I think it looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it is funny. Like even though it's not as funny as it should be, it is a funny movie. Like I did find myself laughing throughout. And it does look stylistically good. And again, one reason why I give Wes Anderson more of a pass than like Steven Spielberg and Ready Player One is that like Wes Anderson legitimately does do like even when he fucks up, even when he doesn't do, there are things about his movies that are problematic or like lacking. He still is a filmmaker that brings something new to the table. And I don't mean new from his style necessarily, but he does bring his own very unique, very individualized style. And I wish there were more directors like that gave us like more of a
You see,
selection.
I do and I don't. I like his style, but I kind of wish he would be able to use different kind of styles because it seems like he has one template. He kind of just stamps on all his projects that he does. Whereas someone more along the lines of like Steven Soderbergh, like can't really pin down like one direct style that he does because he does so many different kind of genres, and you can't really like basically watch like a scene and then like compare it to another one of his films and then be like, this is absolutely a Soderbergh film because from one to one they're stylistically very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that's not like a major criticism because yes, having your own like immediately identifiable style in cinema is very impressive, but I guess it's just kind of gotten a bit to a point where it feels one note now, kind of.
No, like I this is an interesting conversation where like, I mean, the Coen brothers are another example of like, I think they find a good middle ground where like when you're watching a Coen brothers movie, it kind of always feels like a Coen brothers movie, but so many of them are like drastically different. They go into different genres and they have different like tones. There's just something about the dialogue and the aesthetic that helps you like, oh, this is a Coen brothers movie, but you know, Raising Arizona is hardly anything like True Grit, you know, or like No Country for Old Men isn't, I don't know.
Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar, yeah. But, you know, like, I mean, this movie was very visually pleasing. It was a good-looking movie, but I don't think it was that funny. Like, I mean, I laughed a few times, but for Wes Anderson, like, when I watched Grand Budapest Hotel, there were, like, parts where like I was just trying to stifle laughing too long.
I think Grand Budapest Hotel goes for a much more edgy kind of humor, though.
Sure, but I mean,
but this was like more of a cute kind of humor.
Yeah, but
I think it might be that's the edgy Grand Budapest Hotel humor is more your style.
But I mean, it's like Bottle Rocket is really really funny, and it's like that movie's not edgy.
No, but again, Bottle Rocket is really up your alley. It's about criminals.
Sure, but I mean, like, I remember just, like, being beside myself with laughter when he's just like, I'm not always as confident as I look. I don't even know why that's so funny to me. It's just, it kills me. There's nothing edgy about that humor.
Yeah, and just for everyone's he's talking about Owen Wilson riding like a moped.
Wearing a yellow
jumpsuit, saying he's not as confident as he looks.
Because people had just made fun of him. It doesn't matter. It doesn't... No,
it's a very funny moment.
It's just, I don't know. And to me, like, that's the main reason why, like, I don't dislike Wes Anderson. I wouldn't even say that he's made a bad movie. I don't dislike any of the movies that he's made. It's just, I don't always care about them. And I think that, like, he does humor better than he does anything else, in my opinion.
I think he does, like, visuals better than anything else, but I see your point.
I mean, if you like symmetry...
It's not just symmetry. It's just his composition and his color palettes are like really.
If you like Easter, sorry.
You know I don't like Easter. No, I think like composition and color palette is something that Wes Anderson is. I don't know. I still think he's a really talented filmmaker.
He is. No one's denying that.
And I think that I don't know. It's like there aren't a lot of directors that have like really overt styles like him, and it's good. It's good that he's making work, and I want to see more of it. And you know, Isle of Dogs isn't like his best, but it's a movie that I would watch again, and it's a movie that like I would show my parents. It's a movie that I would sit down and just let it run too, because it's good to look at, and it is pretty fun. Like there are. Like, we talk about, like, maybe the humor isn't up to par with Grand Budapest Hotel. But, like, the fact that there's 5 alpha dogs in a team, and they, like, insist on voting on everything, even though Chief is kind of the leader.
That was a pretty funny 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and it's a thing that, like, yeah, we admit that we want to see more of it, but we want to see more of it because what we got was actually pretty funny and pretty interesting. And Chief should have been black. He should have stayed black.
Yeah. Anyone
else? I mean, I know Kyle didn't
I didn't dislike the movie.
When they wash Chief.
Oh,
I thought that was kind of I'm with those. That was needless.
Yeah,
it's like why do you need a second design for this character? Like
there was just a lot of shit at the end where I was like ready for this to be over because it's just dragging out and it's weird, pointless decisions where it's like Spots has fallen in love, so is the little boy, so is Bryan Cranston. Everybody's fallen in love. Chief, whatever. Everybody's fallen in love, and now the little boy's the mayor, and he's got to get a new
Scarlett
kidney.
Johansson really could have been cut out of this movie completely. Her Biscuit was the show dog.
Okay. Nutmeg. Yeah.
Nutmeg.
I didn't remember the name, but I knew Biscuit couldn't have been right.
What? There was something about Biscuit. What's?
They give the dog biscuits.
Yeah. Okay. Nutmeg. No. Nutmeg should have been cut out.
Part of me wonders like the reason the movie like didn't have such like follow the big pack of alpha dogs is because Wes Anderson got so many like bigger names. They're probably all busy doing other stuff. So it's like, this is an animated movie. You don't have to show up. You have to do voice acting stuff, and you don't have to be in the whole movie because they're really busy.
Huh?
I don't know.
No,
I feel like
I don't think so. Maybe,
but I mean, like, it's like, why not have all of them in it, like, way more? Because that was the best part of the movie.
I just think he got distracted with this other weird thing that didn't add anything, which was Spots being Chief's brother. That was just this weird thing that didn't add anything to the movie.
Plus, I kept expecting, like, you know how movies, like, when there's two things, like, two people that look alike, it's like, oh, there's going to be a part where, like, you don't know which one's which, and there's a scuffle.
Where that'll like come into the story for some form of relevancy.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like even the reveal of it, like he gives him a bath, and then he's like, "Oh, I do look like your dog, and we were born around the same time in the same part of town. Maybe we're brothers." And then he just confirms it later, like, "Oh, you're from this part of town, and you were born then, and I'm your older brother by 5 minutes." It was just a weird display of information where they introduced maybe he's his brother, and then they're like, "Yeah, he is," and you're like, "Okay, is that going to come into play in any way?" And they're like, "No." It's just we did that.
Like, they might as well have just been two separate dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But would have been quirky though if that would have happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not quirky enough.
Oh, you're right.
And
that's why he's Wes Anderson, and I'm sitting in a library right now.
Yeah. Crack House Library. Recommendations?
Yeah, I went and watched it with my mom. She thought it was delightful. It's delightful. I just don't care about it, but it's a well-made, fun movie if you like fun, which I don't.
It's a sweet movie. It's good to look at. It's fun. It's not his best, and it's not the best. And if you're looking for something that's gonna like tug at your heartstrings, it's not gonna happen. But you know, if you like dogs, if you love dogs,
yeah.
Then watch The Fox and the Hound. Now there's your sad movie. Friendship and Kurt Russell.
Guys, Bryan Cranston voices a dog. It's fun.
Yeah, I guess it's cute. If you don't mind, like, you know, Oriental fetishism and cultural appropriation, go see it. It's fine.
You didn't want to talk about that the whole podcast?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have 35 more minutes to talk about that. Actually, like, I did read a couple articles about that, and yeah, I kind of see it, actually. You know, a bunch of white guys leaning into the whole, like, Japanese mystical, like, samurai type thing, and I can see how that can be perceived as a negative stereotype against them, given that it's coming from a white dude who makes movies about boring white people all the time. But that is one of those things, like, I understand that, but personally, that didn't really detract, like, direct criticism from me. Although there were points where it seemed like the dialogue of the Japanese characters was being played up for laughs and how they were speaking, basically because they're speaking Japanese. That sounds funny to you because you're white.
Yeah, there were definitely parts, like, I was in a packed theater. There were definitely parts where I felt that way and people were laughing.
And it felt, the worst part about that is it felt intentional.
What's weird is, you know, I was in a theater and no one laughed at like any Japanese pronunciation.
No. Okay, I was in the theater. After my movie going experience, I was sitting next to two students who were of I don't know, they're of Asian descent. I don't know how, but so I was, and the entire audience, all the white people decided to laugh a lot at the different accents. and I was super uncomfortable the whole time because they weren't enjoying the white people's reactions.
Yikes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
because it's white people's perception of like the
Mhm.
mystical Far East.
Yes. So it was super uncomfortable, and part of the reason I was like kind of waiting for that movie to be over.
Really?
Yeah.
This is like an interesting thing
So
because
it's like, why are people like? I kept like thinking I was missing something. I was like, why are people laughing? And then at one point it clicked. I'm like, oh,
No, it's just
They think
he
this
don't
is
talk
funny.
like we do.
yeah,
basically.
they think this is funny, and I got a little kind
Huh.
of disturbed at humanity for
That-
a second during this movie.
That's odd because that didn't happen in my theater. No one was laughing at that stuff.
Yeah, like a lot of people were laughing, and I was like, this is weird.
Did you guys go to Gateway?
I did.
I went to AMC.
Oh, there, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what.
Mm.
I went to Gateway
Yeah,
Friday night.
yeah, that's
I
why
know. Maybe it was a more PC crowd. I don't know.
I feel like Gateway probably would have more. Yeah, so you're not wrong.
No, there definitely
There's
is. Yeah, there definitely is an aspect of there which I don't think the like whole appropriation thing is intentional, but it can still very
It's there.
easily be read as.
Because I thought it was like I liked the aesthetic, and I liked all of. I
Mm.
like seeing that like.
It was
culture.
interesting. I thought it was interesting how they handled it, and I thought it was stylish and cool for what they did. But I can see how it leans into sort of like the mystical far up east,
Mhm.
like kind of like what happened with Doctor Strange. How there's a whole controversy with Tilda
Yeah.
Swinton. I forget the character's name. It was supposed to be an Asian character, but they recast it as Tilda Swinton.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like one of those things like, oh, that's whitewashing. It's like, yeah, but if we don't do that, if we have like, Charlie Chan in that role being like, oh, I teach you the ways of magic and martial arts. It's like, that's awful. Like, that's just really reinforcing an old kind of shitty stereotype about, Asian culture.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I see that point, but for me, like the more like cultural appropriation things that bug more, like the kind of things that you see in like I don't know, something like the NBC style, ABC style thing where it's like, oh, we're gonna have a diverse cast of characters to elevate this like white protagonist, and that's something that isn't in this movie, and this is why it doesn't bother me as much. Like if Atari had been a white kid, like forget about it. The like all bets would have been off. Like because he's not, I'm like, okay, well, it's set in Japan, and the characters are dogs, but the other characters are Japanese, and the English speaking, like the fact that it's English speaking dogs is just so that we can understand it. And if it had, like that's why something more like Ready Player One bugs me, where they're just like, all right, we're gonna have like he's gonna have like diverse like
we know.
teammates,
We know.
but it's just so that we can make the main white guy look good. Or something like it's like the black best friend trope. I mean, like even like I saw the first episode of The Bastard Executioner, and it's like set in like medieval England, and then the guy has like there's like a black guy in his entourage, and it's like this is medieval England.
It's diversity by committee. It's like people are like, oh, we need to try to get these other demographics in. They're going to complain if it's all white people. It's like, well, let's write them in then. And it's like they don't really know what they're doing, and they're basically just looking at numbers, seeing what's going to work for writing into the plot. And like what you're saying is more like character centric and whatnot with that. For this one, it just felt more like the world that they built up for it. Because like I agree, yeah, it's great that it's a Japanese kid doing it, and they actually are speaking Japanese. It's not just like maybe like were they all just speaking English, even though it was set there because it's easier for audiences. Like it's nice that they took that step and tried to do like the world building the way they did, but it still undeniably leans into like what can be considered a stereotype of that culture.
I can see that. Like it's not the same way as like a Ghost in the Shell, but it is there is something going a little bit shady going on.
Even with
there.
that, like you can argue adaptation versus like interpretation, but since this is an original work, it doesn't have that to fall back on as much because it's just his story that he made and how he chose to tell it.
Yeah. So yeah.
Food for thought.
Isle of Dogs is racist.
WolfPunch.